Hello friends and welcome. If you're new here, my name is Crystal and on this channel I talk about everything horror. I do reviews, sometimes they have spoilers and sometimes they don't, and I also like to do those top 5 videos every now and then, and other random videos here and there. Also, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. I just like to watch horror movies and shows and talk about them with you guys. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the 2022 film Resurrection. So this video is gonna be just a little bit different. I'm gonna explain the film to you guys, and then I'm gonna do my best to try to explain the ending, because wow. There are timestamps below if you want to skip around a little bit. Don't worry, I won't be offended. So before we get into the video, I did not realize that this film had already been streaming on Shudder for a couple weeks now. So when I go on Shudder, I like to kind of scroll through that like top bar, and I kept seeing this film, and it clicked the other night that this is Rebecca Hall's new film. And I swear, ever since I saw her in The Night House, I have been like movie stalking her. Also, I know I haven't done like a no spoiler video in a little while, but the last few films that I've talked about, I really felt the need to like talk through the endings or like what's going on in the films, like the ones that I've been watching lately. So Resurrection was released on Shudder October 28th, and it follows Margaret, whose life is in order. She is capable, disciplined, and successful. Everything is under control until David returns, that is, carrying with him the horrors of Margaret's past. It stars Rebecca Hall, Tim Roth, and Grace Kaufman, and it was written and directed by Andrew Siemens, and it does have a running time of almost 2 hours. Okay, so first and foremost, Rebecca Hall as an actress. That over 7-minute long monologue that she did was so good. My eyes were like glued to the screen as she was telling us the history of her and David. I was reading an article that the director actually wanted to do flashbacks during this monologue, but decided against it once Rebecca Hall started the scene. Oh, and this scene was only shot through twice. That's insane, because it was so good. So I really liked how the film sort of set up the dynamics of Margaret's life, this very structured, disciplined form and nature of her life, as well as her daughter, Abigail. The tension in the film was also very easily felt, because there were moments when it was quiet, and then Margaret would like run outside, and the camera would begin to shake, and the music and the background noise was very loud. And immediately you start to see the cracks of some kind of PTSD or anxiety that she's holding on to. And of course we see this very strange overprotective nature that she has with her daughter Abigail. So the gore and the special effects were good. We had that like baby in the oven, and of course the entire scene when Maggie, the main character, is gutting David like a damn fish. I wanted to applaud Tim Roth as well for his depiction of David. The way that he played the character was so interesting and so scary to watch. I mean, we all have to agree that David was in fact a very controlling, manipulative, abusive man. And also in that same breath, didn't even think he was any of those things, which made him even scarier. Rebecca Hall said that she gravitates towards characters who are internally suffering, which rings true, considering her character in this film as well as her character in The Night House. What also makes Rebecca Hall so talented is I can easily distinguish between these two characters. For example, like, you know how sometimes you can see an actor in one role and then you can just see that actor in that role forever? And that's really not the case with Rebecca Hall, and I think that's why I like her so much. This film also shows how detrimental psychological abuse can be on its victim, and how long this psychological abuse can be held onto by the victim for a very, very long time, without them maybe even realizing that it's doing it. Her repressed trauma and being brainwashed by David all came back to her at once. I caught myself a few times during this film being like, girl, what are you doing? But then I told myself that at 18 years old, pretty much a child, her character of Margaret was being groomed, manipulated, and her entire self-worth was wrapped into this man who would make her do these things called kindnesses in order to control her. So when he tracked her down 20 plus years later, it was easy for him to know which buttons to push because he was the one that put them there in the first place. We also learned that when she was being controlled by David, she became pregnant with her son Ben. And Margaret's obsession with David shifted to her newborn son instead. And because David was such a controlling and jealous man, and he was jealous of the attention that Ben was getting, he decided to kill and eat the... I don't want to say it, but you can get it. He also is able to convince Margaret that Ben was safe inside of his stomach now. There was even at one point towards the end of the film where Margaret has her ear pressed up against Ben's stomach and we can hear the baby crying. And I found myself being like, is this real? Can this happen? Of course, we know that it can't, but I think that's what this film does so well. It made me feel like, oh damn, if I was desperate enough to believe that my dead child was alive in somebody else's body, I mean, I probably would. So as I was doing my research after I finished watching the film, I learned that hallucinations are a natural response when humans undergo unbearable pain and mental pain, and also desperation. It's apparently a way that we protect ourselves and protect our mind when the mental and physical pain is too much to bear. So because Margaret was stabbed in the back and then she rips the knife out of her back, and on top of that, she is in so much mental pain thinking about her dead son, her mind is starting to hallucinate. The last scene we got was a clear indication that she was hallucinating because we see her daughter Abigail, she's not wearing the sweatshirt anymore. She's wearing a white sweater and jeans, which is a callback to the beginning of the film when Margaret is trying to get her to wear something else besides the sweatshirt every day. We also see that Abigail is calmly packing up her things for college, which has been a really stressful time for both her and her mom. We then see Abigail go into her mother's room and she sees her mother holding the baby. And everything in this scene is just a little bit too bright, a little bit too clean. And then the camera slowly starts to zoom in to Margaret. And at this point, she takes a deep breath and we know that reality has set back in. So I have a theory. I do believe in real life, out of her hallucination, she did gut and kill David. But instead of maybe cuddling her baby, she's cuddling one of his internal organs. I think what happened in reality is that someone came into the hotel room, probably a maid, and found a gutted and dead David and a nearly dead Margaret bleeding out, cuddling an organ on the floor, and whoever came into the hotel room called the police. And as Margaret is being treated for her wounds, she comes out of her hallucination with that really deep breath before the film ends. So the character of David was able to convince and manipulate her so terribly that she believed every single word that he said. So this film also kind of reminded me of the film Men, with its female lead working against the male protagonist and dealing with this trauma and anxiety. And of course, an ambiguous ending that is up for the audience to interpret in the way that they see fit. So this film, Resurrection, Speak No Evil, the film that I've talked about in another video, is a true horror film because it taps into a very dark and very real human emotions. I have to say that when the film ended, I was frustrated and I didn't grasp what was going on. I'm not a huge fan of not understanding a film, but as I did my research, I realized how lucky I am that I didn't and I don't fully understand the film. If you can read between the lines, you can get it. The character of Margaret was so broken and traumatized by her relationship with this man that it caused turmoil that she wasn't even aware of for the rest of her life. We saw it with how she treated her daughter, always telling her to be careful, to text her every single hour, and at some points in the film, Margaret was staring at Abigail. And at one point in the film, I was yelling at Rebecca Hall's character to tell her daughter what happened with her and David when she was so young. But I think that would play into Margaret's character feeling vulnerable. And you cannot be in full control of a situation if you're vulnerable. And control is something that we saw exhibited by Margaret throughout the entire film, unless it was with David. So what do we think happened after Margaret took her deep breath when the film ends? I think that she woke up somewhere in a hospital and she found out that she killed David and that her son was still dead. And you could probably fill in the rest of the story yourself. All right, guys, I hope that made sense. If you want more videos like this where I kind of like explain the film and explain the ending to like more of these ambiguous films, let me know in the comments and I'll do my best. And that is gonna be it for me, end of this video. If you like these kinds of videos, I have an entire playlist dedicated to horror movie reviews and shows in the description box below, or it's floating around somewhere on the screen. Thanks so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. You can follow me on my social medias if you want. And make sure to drink water today and go watch a horror movie.